Welcome in, everybody. Brandon Taylor here. Today, we're going to look at the SEC's 2025 conference opponents. The conference just released these just recently. And look, before we even get into this, you may say, Brandon, why are we looking this far ahead in the future? We have not even gotten to the 2024 season. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. We don't even know what. There's no clue with the transfer portal these days and recruiting and all those things. How do we know what 2025 is going to look like? Well, let's look at it this way. 2024 is going to be the start of a new era in college football, essentially. You've got your 12-team playoff, okay, and all the new things, all the shakeup with that. The constant NIL and transfer portal evolution, all right? You have new conference foes. You've got Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC. You've got huge changes in the Big Ten. You've got big changes in the ACC with, a little bit of clash with certain schools. I won't name names, but there's two of them. Okay? You've got the Pac-12, which is going to be the Pac-2, and what's going to happen with that. You've got all these things. You've got new coaches like Kalen DeBoer, the retiring Nick Saban leaving the Alabama Crimson Tide, riding off into the sunset. What's the future going to look like after we get through this first year, 2024? The honeymoon phase is going to be over, and we're really going to see if all of this stuff is sustainable. So let's get right into it, shall we? As we look right here, this is in alphabetical order from Alabama all the way to Vanderbilt. And we're just going to cut right through these here. And let's start with the first one here, which is going to be Alabama. So as you see, in the white is the home, and in the blue or the darker shade at the bottom are the away games. Now, if you're noticing something that looks familiar, it's because it is familiar, because this is the exact 2024 schedule, just the homes are flipped. But that is going to make a big difference, I'm telling you, in this season here, 2025. So let's start with Alabama. You got Kalen DeBoer, first of all. And I want to stop at this for just a moment. You see, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and LSU, all home games. They have to go to Auburn for the Iron Bowl. They got to go to Georgia. They got to go to Missouri and to South Carolina. Now, Alabama has won 10 games in the last 16 seasons. They've won 7 national titles, and they've been in, how many that they haven't won? Okay? Now, here's the thing. They're projected to win 9.5 games. The over-under from FanDuel is 9.5 games for 2024. You look at this schedule right here. This year, they got to go to Georgia, they got to go to Missouri, they go to Auburn. They do have to make the trek to Oklahoma and in Tennessee in 2024. They got to go to Baton Rouge here in 2024. Which year is better for the Tide? Okay? Because Missouri is no pushover. Georgia, absolutely no pushover. Now, you have some really tough games. LSU, we don't know. What's their future going to look like? Quarterback's going to be completely different. You're going to have other, positions that are changing. But after this season, we'll know a lot more about what Kalen DeBoer is going to do there. You've got Milroe, but will he be gone after the 2024 season? I suspect he will be. Is it Ty Simpson? I guess the good thing for Alabama, they're recruiting in 2025 pretty well. A lot of players that were committed to Washington is looking at Alabama, and specifically on defense. Now, this is a younger Alabama team. Can they overcome whatever adversity they face this year? And when Kalen DeBoer's honeymoon period is over, what's it going to look like in 2025 when they have to play these teams right here? It'd be interesting to see. But moving along to Arkansas, the thing about it, you've got Sam Pittman there. at Arkansas. And this year alone, they're projected to win 5.5. 5.5 is the over-under. They have Auburn, Mississippi State, Missouri, and Texas A&M at home. They have to go to Baton Rouge. They got to go to Oxford, Mississippi. They have to go to Knoxville, Tennessee, and Austin, Texas. Those are going to test them to the limit. If Sam Pittman is still the coach after this season, if they give him another year, if he does just enough this year to get through, and he's on the hot seat for the 25 season, it could get ugly. And I hate to see that. We all love Sam Pittman. I mean, he's just a lovable guy. He's a likable guy. Okay? I'm not going to hate on the man. But this is a tough schedule for them, especially if he's on that hot seat. And I don't see, depending on this year, look, these over-unders are all we have to go by. Do they translate to the next year? I don't know. When we get to Florida here in a moment, you'll see. We'll really talk about this. And for Billy Napier, it could be ugly for him as well. Moving on to Auburn, you got Hugh Freeze looking to take that next step or take that leap. They got to play Alabama. They'll have them at home in the Iron Bowl, which is good. They'll have Georgia at home, which you never know. You never know. Kentucky, and they'll have Missouri at home. So those are some tough games that they have the privilege of playing at home. Now they have to go to Arkansas. They have to go to Norman, Oklahoma, and, Lord knows what that environment's going to be like in this new SEC era. They have to go to College Station to play Texas A&M, and then they have Vanderbilt in Nashville. Now for Auburn this year, their over and under is 7.5. They're an unknown to me. What's Auburn going to look like in 25? Couldn't tell you. They're one of those teams where you're really going to see after this year if they've progressed any or if they've stayed the same. I don't think they're going to regress any. I think they're either going to stay where they are right now or go even further. But how much further? Hugh Freeze is definitely looking to, they had Alabama on the ropes, okay? You've got to finish games. That's all I'm going to say. You got to finish games. Hugh Freeze has kind of had a reputation of not making halftime adjustments. Can he turn that around, and can he have a successful program in 2025? We'll see. Now I'm going to get out of the way here. We're going to look at Florida. Florida with Billy Napier just holding on, grasping on just for dear life to his seat. They have Georgia, and it's listed as a home game, but we all know that's the Florida-Georgia game that's played in Jacksonville, neutral site. They have Mississippi State coming to town. They have Tennessee coming to town and Texas coming to town. Now, they have to make the trek to Kentucky. They got to go to LSU, to Ole Miss, and to Texas A&M. Again, we talked about how this year was looking pretty rough for Florida. Really, honestly, and truthfully, the next year's not going to be any better. They had a terrible draw. This coming season. Does it make it better or worse? You tell me. I'm going to let you be the judge here. Having Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Texas at home, or would you rather have Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M at home? Because this right here is not any easier than what this season's is. Now, what their non-conference games are going to look like, I don't know. That's to be determined. We'll know that later on, at the end of the year or the beginning of next year, whenever that actual schedule does release. But Florida, Billy Napier, it could be a tough season for them again. And Napier, if he doesn't turn this around, if he's not gone after the 2024 season, he better be updating his resume, honestly. Now, as we move on here, we'll go to the next row here. And we're going to start with Georgia. Now, Georgia continuing to recruit well. Kirby Smart there. That's never going to stop. You've got a lot of players leaving this year. We've talked about that in a previous video. But, one thing about Georgia is Kirby Smart has really built himself up to be a very good... he's comparing himself to Saban. He is really becoming that coach. Okay, he's beat Saban on multiple occasions. All right, he has won 2 titles, 2 in a row, and he's had great teams for years. It took him a while. It took him a few years to really build them up. To this point, they had probably one of the greatest defenses of all time just a few years back. They're going to recruit this year. They're going to replace the players that they're losing to the draft this year. In 2025, they'll be even better. And who knows who's going to enter the program by 2025 with this transfer portal. That's why I say it's so hard to predict these things. But they've got Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Texas at home. Those are some good games to have at home. I'm going to be honest with you. They got to go to Auburn. That shouldn't be a problem. They'll have Florida, the neutral site. They go to Starkville. I don't see that being an issue. And I don't really see them having an issue at Tennessee and Knoxville. Because if they control that game early, you take those fans out of it. Just like with LSU for Tennessee, if you take those fans out of the game early, you have a larger chance of winning, especially later in the game when it's going to count. So we'll have to see just what Kirby is going to be able to do in 2025. Moving on over to Kentucky, Mark Stoops is going to have Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas at home, and he'll have to go to Auburn, to Georgia, to South Carolina, and to Vanderbilt. Now, for Kentucky, they're 6.5 over under for the 2024 season. Okay. All right. And this is what I want you to tell me in the comments on all these games, or the game that the team that interests you. Of all these teams here, would you prefer 2024 schedule or the 2025 schedule? Which teams would you rather have at home or not have at home? Now for Kentucky, Texas, and Ole Miss, Tennessee, those are good, and Florida for that matter. You don't have to go to the swamp. That's good. But you have to go to Georgia. And that's never easy for anybody. So, can they improve, take their next step? Moving on now to LSU, a team that there with Brian Kelly, he's got a lot of work to do. I think surely by 25 they'll have the quarterback and the new offensive situation figured out. They have Arkansas, Florida, South Carolina, and Texas A&M at home. They have to go to Alabama, to Ole Miss, to Oklahoma, and to Vanderbilt. That's going to be extremely tough. This is another one of those schedules where I think you'd rather have it the other way around, honestly. LSU is predicted 9.5. Over under 9.5 for the 24 season. So, my guess is as good as yours. This is tough. It's really tough. Moving on, Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin continuing off of his momentum from the last season, 2023, into 2024. 2024 is expected to be a great year for Ole Miss. He's got all the cards on the table. The ball is in his court, whatever metaphor that you would prefer to use. It's all there. Now, with that being said, in 2025, you've got some tough road. You got a couple tough road games here, but you know, to me, I think this schedule may be a little bit better than this year's. Honestly, could be wrong. You've got Arkansas at home, Florida at home, LSU at home, South Carolina at home. Arkansas is always an extremely tough game for Ole Miss, regardless if it's in Arkansas or if it's in Oxford. Okay, having Arkansas at home, really you have an advantage, but that is one of those series, like I said earlier, it doesn't always matter who the home team is. That home field advantage doesn't always apply. In the SEC. You don't have to go to the Swamp, and you don't have to go to Baton Rouge, to Death Valley in 2025. That is a victory. A victory as in, you don't have to go down there, you get them at home. Whether you have a victory in the game, that's to be determined at that date, whenever that date will be, obviously. Georgia, look, you get Georgia at home. This will be the third year in a row Ole Miss has played Georgia. You'll have them at home in 24. 2025, you got to go back to Sanford Stadium. That's never easy. You're going to Norman, Oklahoma. That's going to be a very interesting game. There's going to be a lot of away fans going there. It's going to be so exciting, I think. These new conference opponents. I think there's going to be great away crowds, great home games for Texas and Oklahoma, but great visiting crowds going to these two new conference foes. Ole Miss, the FanDuel has them at 9.5 and 24. I figure it'll be about the same in 25 as well. And as we move along in this list, let's take a look right here at Mississippi State. You've got Jeff Lebby coming in, the former coach from Oklahoma and former coach from Ole Miss, coming into Starkville, hoping to make a big difference. And he's got some tough games. He's got a tough test. It's never easy. Yes, like I talked about earlier with Kalen DeBoer, there is a honeymoon period, but in the SEC, it doesn't really feel like a honeymoon. I mean, it is tough. It is grueling. They've got Georgia at home. They've got Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl at home. They got Tennessee at home and Texas at home. They have to go to Arkansas, to Florida, to Missouri, and to Texas A&M. Honestly, I would rather have those 4 home games than those 4 away games. If I'm Mississippi State, I would much prefer Georgia to come to my place. I'd much rather have the Egg Bowl at my place. I'd rather not have to go to Knoxville, to Neyland Stadium, and I'd prefer not to have to go to Texas to face that ruckus environment either. Florida, Florida's tough going to the Swamp, but I think, honestly, for Mississippi State, this year is going to be a tough first test for them. They're 4.5 over under. I think they're better than that in 25. So moving on along, we've got the great Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers. They'll have Alabama at home, Mississippi State at home, South Carolina at home, and Texas A&M at home. They have to go to Arkansas, to Auburn, to Oklahoma, and to Vanderbilt. This is a great schedule. Another great schedule, in my opinion. Missouri, they're hot. They're going to be hotter next year. They also have a 9.5 over under, much like Ole Miss does. 2 teams that were really hot this year. They're going to be hot next year, and that's going to even continue into the next year. That's my prediction. Alabama, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, what's that going to be like? This is a great schedule for Missouri. This is a great schedule. Now, we get into Oklahoma next. Now, Oklahoma, coming into the conference, they'll have their feet wet. They'll have 1 year behind them at this point, having Auburn coming to town, LSU coming to town, Ole Miss coming to town, and Missouri coming to town as well. And they have to go to Alabama, to Columbia, South Carolina, to Knoxville, Tennessee, and they'll obviously have the game, the Red River rivalry, Red River shootout, whatever it's going to be called going forward. It's going to be an SEC game. I'm really excited for that. And as we all know, it's held at the Cotton Bowl Stadium, the old Cotton Bowl Stadium there in Dallas. Oklahoma. How are they going to hold up? See, Texas and Oklahoma, really? What is their over-under? 7.5 this year. I can't tell you what Oklahoma's going to look like in 2025. Same thing with Texas, honestly. We see the games that Texas had with Alabama. There's not really much, samples to go by. There's not a sample size. But it is what it is here. You've got a couple great teams, actually 3 great teams if we rope LSU in there, coming to your place. Yes, you do have to go to Alabama. That's going to be tough. And Knoxville, Tennessee is going to welcome you with all the ruckusness and, maybe you won't get hit by any projectiles in that ball game. If it's close, Oklahoma fans, just watch yourself, protect your head, just be aware of your surroundings at all times. That is my advice to you. So as we move along here to South Carolina, I'm going to get out of the way here, move right over here. South Carolina, they are predicted to go 5-5. That's their over-under. They going to go to a bowl game, or are they going to not go to a bowl game? You've got Shane Beamer down there. Beamer ball. They have Alabama, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt coming to town. They have to go to LSU, to Ole Miss, to Missouri, and to Texas A&M. That is brutal. That is brutal. Now, Alabama and Oklahoma, and you could rope Kentucky in there. Those are 3 games that you may have some, you could have some advantage at home. But you got to go to Death Valley. You got to go to Oxford, to a fan base that's excited. It's really exciting getting behind their team. Same thing with Missouri, a fan base that's really, really stepping behind that team, and they're just shooting for the stars. And Texas A&M, it's never easy going to College Station, to Kyle Field, with the 100,000+ people that fill that stadium. Let's move on along here as we're going to the last four. The last 4. Tennessee. The Volunteers will have Arkansas, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt coming to town. They're going to go to Alabama, to Florida, to Kentucky, and to Mississippi State. Now, Tennessee projected 8.5 over/under in 2024. Now Josh Heupel. This is another tough draw here. Yes, you have Georgia, you have Oklahoma at home. I will never count Arkansas out. But you've got Georgia at home and you've got Oklahoma at home. But you got to go to Tuscaloosa. You've got to go to the Swamp. You got to go to Kentucky. And you never know about Mississippi State. That's an environment that could be, a little tough. Especially for a team like Tennessee. Some of these teams that don't play the Western teams, that's another thing about these divisions going away. You've got these teams that aren't maybe as used to these environments. So an environment like Mississippi State down there in Starkville with those cowbells, it could be a tough task. We'll just have to see. Moving right along here to Texas, the other new addition to the conference. They'll have Arkansas coming to Austin. They'll have, obviously, the rivalry game, the Red River there with Oklahoma, the neutral site game. They'll have Texas A&M coming in. That's gonna be fun. And you're gonna have Vanderbilt. You got to go to Florida, to Georgia, to Kentucky, and to Mississippi State. The Swamp is gonna be tough. Georgia is gonna be tough. Kentucky is gonna be tough. Mississippi. Those are gonna be some tough road games there. Texas, but you know what? Honestly, Sarkisian is going to be ready. Okay, Texas is on that higher tier. They're on that high level, and I don't see any difference in 2025. 10.5 over/under in 24. I would expect about the same in 25. it's so exciting. So exciting. Can't wait for the fall. Cannot wait for it. All right, so let's take a look at our last two teams. We got Texas A&M. You got Mike Elko. Well, will have had his first year. What becomes of that? I don't know. We'll see. But he's going to have Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, and South Carolina coming to town there in College Station. They'll have to make the trek to Arkansas, to Death Valley. They'll go to Columbia, Missouri, and to Austin, Texas. That's going to be tough for Texas. You know, that's just that's going to be a good old rivalry right there. Going to Austin, they're going to look to really, that fan base is going to show themselves ready. Like, they're going to want to prove that they are the Texas team. So going forward, regardless of where that game's being played, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough for Elko there. You've got a pretty good home draw, but really, I don't know. Texas A&M, after this season in 24, they may be incredibly improved. That's to be determined. And the final team on here, poor old Vanderbilt, there with Clark Lee. They've got Auburn, Kentucky, LSU, and Missouri. All those fan bases are going to have a great weekend in Nashville. They do have to take the travel to Alabama, to South Carolina, to Tennessee, and to Texas. Ooh, that is rough. That is rough. Vanderbilt predicted 2.5 over under. I really hate seeing the Commodores, so low. I really hate to see them at the low level that they are. I want them to improve. I want them to be able to upset a team like Auburn. I want them to be able to upset a team like Kentucky. I want them to go on the road and beat somebody like South Carolina. That's exciting to see. It's exciting to see Vanderbilt have some success. But this is grueling. This is grueling. But there you have it, folks. That is the 2025 conference opponents from the SEC. They just released this recently, and what do you think about it? What are your takeaways from it? Now, again, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a long way away. Okay? I mean, what we're talking about for the 2024 season is the way too early. Okay? But I want you to look ahead, because you're going to have all these changes this year. All right? It's going to be just the way it is next year. So it's going to be the second year of the new playoff. It's going to be the second year of all these new teams in these conferences. It's going to be the second year of no divisions in these conferences. And it's going to be the second year for a lot of these coaches. Could be the first year for some coaches as well. We'll have to see what the coaching carousel is going to look like after the 2024 season. But there you have it, folks. 2025 conference opponents. We're in the season now. Early 2024, mid 2024, where we're just waiting and waiting to see what the future is going to look like in the Southeastern Conference. Thank you so much for joining me, for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Help us out here as I start this new journey. As always, I'm Brandon Taylor. Peace. We'll see you in the next one.